is from the book of John, the 21st chapter. After these things, Jesus showed himself again to the disciples by the Sea of Tiberias. And he showed himself in this way. Gathered there together were Simon Peter, Thomas called the twin, Nathanael of Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 others of his disciples. Simon Peter said to them, "I am going fishing." They said to him, "We will go with you." They went out and got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. Just after daybreak, Jesus stood on the beach, but the disciples did not know that it was Jesus. Jesus said to them, "Children, you have no fish, have you?" They answered him, "No." He said to them, "Cast the net to the right side of the boat, and you will find some." So they cast it, and now they were not able to haul it in because there were so many fish. That disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, "It is the Lord." When Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put on some clothes, for he was naked, and jumped into the sea. But the other disciples came in the boat, dragging the net full of fish, for they were not far from the land, only about 100 yards off. When they had gone ashore, they saw a charcoal fire there with fish on it and bread. Jesus said to them, "Bring some of the fish that you have just caught." So Simon Peter went aboard and hauled the net ashore, full of large fish, 153 of them. And though there were so many, the net was not torn. Jesus said to them, "Come and have breakfast." Now none of the disciples dared to ask him, "Who are you?" because they knew it was the Lord. Jesus came and took the bread and gave it to them, and did the same with the fish. This was now the 3rd time that Jesus appeared to the disciples after he was raised from the dead. When they had finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Feed my lambs." A second time he said to him, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Tend my sheep." He said to him the 3rd time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter felt hurt because he said to him the 3rd time, "Do you love me?" And he said to him, "Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Feed my sheep. Very truly I tell you, when you were younger, you used to fasten your own belt to go wherever you wished. But when you grow old, you will stretch out your hands, and someone else will fasten a belt around you and take you where you do not wish to go." He said this to indicate the kind of death by which he would glorify God. After this he said to him, "Follow me." Peter turned and saw the disciple whom Jesus loved following them. He was the one who had reclined next to Jesus at the supper and had said, "Lord, who is it that is going to betray you?" When Peter saw him, he said to Jesus, "Lord, what about him?" Jesus said to him, "If it is my will that he remain until I come, what is that to you? Follow me." The word of God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God.
Well, most of us, when we think of shepherding, we think of these beautiful green rolling hills, beautiful little stream that kind of cuts through it all, the perfect balance of sunlight and everything. That's not what the disciples would have thought about. It would look a little more like what's on the screen. Israel's just kind of a rocky, arid place. Even back in Jesus' day, the better places were still very arid and rocky. Being a shepherd there was dirty, dangerous, demanding work. And when you did it long enough, you just smelled like sheep all the time. It was a life that required a lot of learning how to watch over the sheep, protect the sheep, what to feed the sheep, and how to lead them to the right places where they could eat. To learn to think like a sheep. so you can anticipate their responses to certain situations. And as a shepherd, you had to have a lot of fortitude. You had to get up and get out there every single day. It didn't matter what else was happening. It didn't matter what the weather was like, whether it was hot or cold or rainy or dry. It didn't matter whether or not you felt good or not. None of your ailments mattered to the sheep. It didn't even matter how much you felt like doing it or not doing it. It was something that had to be done. In the Bible reading today, we hear this exchange between Jesus and Peter, in which Jesus talks to Peter about shepherding, but he begins by asking a question. And he asks it 3 times. Simon, do you love me? That probably brings to mind another setting of the situation earlier in the gospel, when Jesus was arrested. Peter followed along and ended up in the courtyard. And 3 times he was asked, aren't you one of his disciples? And 3 times he said, no. Here's one interpretation of that story.
Grace is God's unmerited favor for us, His crazy love. And the truth is, many times we struggle understanding it. If you find yourself struggling to understand God's grace, don't beat yourself up. Even the disciples struggled with understanding grace.
Jesus sent you? You're alive! I can't believe you're alive! Okay, I was in the boat and I wasn't catching any fish, okay? But I heard this voice and the voice said, cast your net to the other side. And so I'm thinking, well, I'm a fisherman, I know what I'm doing, but I'm not catching any fish, you know? And so I throw that net over there and then I'll gaggle a fish up into that net and I'm going, this is a total miracle. Who could have done that? I need to know who told me to throw the net to the other side. And boom, I look up and I mean, there's you. You're looking at me on the seashore going, it is I, the Lord, it's real life. I can't believe you're alive. This is awesome. Andrew, get out of the boat. Come on.
Peter.
Yeah.
Do you love me?
Yes, I love you. I love you. You're alive. This is so great.
Good. Feed my sheep.
Andrew, get out of the boat. Come on, man. It's him.
Peter.
Yeah.
Do you love me?
I love you. Yes. And I'm so sorry about that rooster clucking. I had no idea what that meant, but I do know. That far, all right? Okay.
Then feed my sheep.
Andrew, I'm smiling, but I'm serious. Come on, get out of the boat. It's him.
Peter.
Yeah.
Do you love me?
Jesus, mere words cannot describe the passion that I have for you. I love you. You know everything. I love you.
Good. Good. Then feed my sheep.
I didn't know your livestock. And I so like you, though. There's something new about you all the time. That's what I love about you.
Peter,
Yeah.
do you remember the morning the ladies went to the tomb?
Yeah. We're all in a room trying to figure out what to do next, because we thought you were dead. You were dead, We're trying to figure all that out, And Mary comes running up, and Mary's like saying, beehive, beehive, beehive. And I'm thinking, I'm allergic to bees. I keep them out, you know what I'm saying? But as she kept getting closer, I heard her correctly. She was saying, he's alive, he's alive, he's alive. And we're going, who's alive, who's alive? And she said, she was at the tomb, and the tomb was empty, and she said that there was an angel there, and the angel said, go tell the disciples of Peter that everything is okay, he is risen. And so, me and John, we hightail it down there, and if John says he beat me, he's totally lying, all right? I beat him, FYI, all right, When we get down there, and I'm looking at that tomb, there it is empty, there's nothing in there, you know what I'm saying? And I'm like, what does this mean? What does this mean? And John is right there. John is so good with words. He should write a book. He is so good with words. And John said, don't you get it, Peter? This is everything Jesus said he was going to do. And you did it. It's done. Let's go. This is so great.
Wait, the angel said what?
Go tell the disciples and Peter that everything is okay. He is risen. You've risen. Let's go.
He said what?
Go tell the disciples and Peter. You said my name. Why did you say my name?
Peter, that's grace.
No, I don't deserve that, because that night people kept coming up to me asking me if I belonged to you, if I was with you, and I kept denying you left and right, all right? No, it'll take me my whole life to make up for what I did. It was unforgivable for what I did.
No. What I did on the cross was meant to take what is unforgivable and make it forgivable. That's my grace. It's not about you. It's always about me. That's grace, Peter.
So certainly the story we read today shows us the restoration, redemption, if you will, of Peter. But there's more than just that. Jesus doesn't simply restore him. He gives him a new purpose. He's going to become a shepherd. Now, Peter's a fisherman, right? Peter knew fishing. Peter was fishing the day Jesus originally came and called him to follow. And as we read the story this morning, it begins with Peter going fishing again. He's lost, he's confused, doesn't know what to do, so he goes back to what's most familiar. He goes back to fishing. And Jesus had told him, Peter, you're going to fish for people. But now Jesus changes that image. He shifts it to shepherding. And I sometimes wonder why. I think it has to do with the fact that you catch fish and it's one haul. You care for sheep and you're in it for the long haul. Peter, he gets called now to that shepherding aspect of this calling. He's going to be following in the footsteps of Jesus, the Good Shepherd. And the same is true for us. We are all shepherded, mentored by others. But likewise, we mentor others ourselves. In essence, we shepherd other people. Most of the times you don't think about yourself like that. But we are all called to shepherd a portion of his flock. It may be that some are family members, friends, co-workers, neighbors. Some of them may even begin as complete strangers. But each one of us has a portion of the flock of Jesus that we are called to shepherd, to mentor. In the story today, I see three rules, if you will, about shepherding that pop out. The first one is, it's all about the sheep, not you. You know, Jesus once compared the shepherd to the hired hand. He said, the hired hand, when it gets tough and difficulty comes, they cut and run. But a shepherd stays with his sheep, even at the expense of his own life. That's the example that Jesus gave and lived out for his disciples. It's the one that he expects them to follow as well. And did you notice Jesus says, Peter, feed my sheep. They're not Peter's sheep. He's not going to go out and find some people to follow him. He's going out to find the sheep that are going to follow the Good Shepherd. And for the Good Shepherd, the sheep always come first. And as Jesus' followers, we pattern our lives, we pattern our ministries after him, after what he did. And his work was very sacrificial. No question about that. Ours will be also sacrificial work. Different kind of sacrifice, probably, but sacrificial nonetheless. Being a shepherd, as I said earlier, can be a dirty, messy job. But being a disciple shepherd is equally messy. We had that whole series leading up to Easter about how messy life is. Jesus met people right where they were, in the middle of the messes of their lives. And he wants us to meet people there too. Wherever that happens to be, we have to be willing to be in the middle of the mess. It's not about what we want. It's not about our preferences. It's all about the sheep. Now, the second rule that pops out to me is that things don't always go according to plan. That's true in most things in life, right? But especially with sheep. A shepherd has no control over the weather, diseases, predators. They come unexpected and often can wreak havoc in the flock, despite the shepherd's plans and preparations. And the same can happen to us. There are things that are beyond our control. As much as we plan and we prepare and we work hard to try to shepherd people, mentor people into the love of Jesus, things come and derail things. Sometimes it's a death that someone has to deal with. Sometimes it's disease or cancer. It can be the pressures of life and family and work. It can just be the lack of interest someone has, or maybe we're the ones dealing with some of those pressures. It can easily be derailed. Jesus told Peter, Peter, when you were young, you went and did as you pleased, but when you get older, there's going to come a time where you won't have that choice. You're going to go where you don't want to go. In fact, Peter, you're going to end up dying like me. That's the prediction that Jesus makes. And sure enough, he does. Peter didn't plan on being crucified, but he was. And you can look at that and say, that's a failure, that's a loss. But it was for God's glory. That's a win. And everything that we may plan may not happen the way we intend. But as long as we're living sacrificially for the purposes of Christ, it's a win. Regardless of what it may seem like on the outside, it's a win. Third thing, Peter's on the hot seat, but Jesus tells him to get to work. Peter's on this hot seat, and normally when someone's on the hot seat, the initial response is to deflect the attention somewhere else. Normally onto someone else, and that's exactly what Peter does. Textbook case. He's feeling uncomfortable from it all, and so what does he do? He looks up and he sees his buddy John, and he says, Jesus, what about him? And I love Jesus' response. I can kind of picture Jesus just not even looking over at John, just continuing to stare right at Peter, kind of shaking his head and saying, Peter, your brother John, that's none of your business. I just told you what you need to do is get to work. Get going. Shepherds and disciple shepherds figure out a way to get to work. It is dangerous and difficult work. It is the work that we're called to do, regardless of anything else. There's a temptation for us to look over our shoulders and look for somebody else to deflect the attention to. God, can't they take care of that? They're so much better at talking than I am. They're so much stronger than I am. They're so much more mature than I am. It doesn't matter. It's not about any of the comparisons. What we are called to do is to love others as Jesus loved us. Not always easy. It's demanding. Sometimes even dangerous. But that's what we're called to do. And shepherds know that you sometimes just have to do it. See, faith is like a muscle. And the more you exercise the muscle, the stronger it gets. And I know when you first start exercising it, it hurts. It's tiring. You don't want to do it. But you do it, and it gets easier. You do it, and you become stronger. The same is true with our faith. The more we live love, the easier it becomes. The more we live love, the better we get at it. The more we live love, the more we see the need that is around us. The more we live love, the way we see God fulfilling that need. We see that we are doubly blessed. Not only have we received God's love, but God's love works in us and through us into someone else. What an amazing thing that is. How humbling that is. How fantastic it is to see. That's why we're already working on the date for the next Living Love. It's going to come probably sometime in early November. But don't wait. You don't have to wait for that date. Any day and every day is a day that you can live love. Loving God, loving others. That's our purpose. It's our stated purpose as a church. But that's who we're called to be. And those two things go hand in hand. The more I love God, the more love I have for others. The more I learn to love others, the more I begin to grasp the depth of God's love for all of us. is the one who lived love perfectly. He gave us this simple meal as a way of remembering that. It's a tangible reminder of the depth of his love for us. That he gave his whole life for us so that our sin could be forgiven, so that we could live freely, that we could spend an eternity in his presence.